This is Middle Class Matt from don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com, and I am Sports Genius. I also am a huge boxing fan. Now, I don't get to do as many boxing videos as I'd like during football season. It kind of consumes my time, especially when football season and basketball season overlap, and then I'm really don't have a lot of time for boxing, but I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite sports, and you can see I do tons of boxing videos in the past, and I've actually gone to boxing matches and taken footage you can't find anywhere else. I have interviews with boxers on this channel, but tonight I was watching HBO, and I got to see Seth Mitchell versus Johnathon to start off, and then in the main event I got to see DeMarco versus Adrien Broner. Now, the first fight is a fight that I kind of had high hopes for. Seth Mitchell is was the hope for the heavyweight division. As they say, heavyweight boxing goes, as boxing goes, as the heavyweight division goes. And that's true. Because when boxing's really doing well as a sport, you have guys like Tyson and Holyfield and Lennox Lewis, big names that everybody knows, household names. When you don't have names like that, boxing isn't as well known. So it's one of those kind of things where everyone is hoping that Seth Mitchell. Now, Seth Mitchell, if you don't know much about him, he's an ex-football player turned boxer. Now, this guy's heavy-handed. When he hits you, there's a thud to it. But tonight, the only thud you heard was when he hit the canvas. In the second round, he was knocked down by Johnathon. Great story. Emmanuel Stewart, his trainer, died recently, unfortunately, tragically. And with that, he had to train Vladimir Klitschko and then train himself or do his training on his own and then come into this fight. After a funeral of his mentor, ill-prepared, and knocks out Seth Mitchell, his first KO. So this was an incredible fight, but it really dashes the hopes of there being another great American heavyweight. Because as good as Johnathon looked tonight, beating Seth Mitchell, I don't necessarily think that he is the caliber fighter who can take on the two Russians. So the next fight was the main event, and like I said, it was DeMarco versus Adrien Broner. Now, Broner is a fighter I like a lot. Now, he's flashy, and that's usually not my kind of fighter. I like blue-collar fighters who come in there and, beat on a guy like Rocky beating a piece of meat. Like a hammer hitting a nail. That's the kind of guys I like. But I like Broner because, yes, he's flashy. Yes, he's cut out of the mold of Roy Jones Jr. or, more recently, Floyd Mayweather. But this guy will knock people out. Even at the end of the fight, he was asked, you're a boxer, but you definitely, seem to be, you really want to fight. And you're a fighter, too. And he is. And that's what I like about him. What I hate about Floyd Mayweather Jr., I hear people go on and on. I have a friend named Leon who goes on and on and on about how great Mayweather is. And yes, he is a good fighter, but he's boring. I fall asleep during his fights. It's this thing here, it's boring. And I'll tell you a few differences between him and Broner. And Broner and him have been compared by many people. Broner doesn't have one-punch knockout power like Floyd Mayweather does. But he gets in there and he throws stiff, thudding shots. I mean, boop, boop, boop. I mean, when he hits you, it's like a telephone pole. And he is willing to get in there and mix it up. Matter of fact, tonight what I noticed about DeMarco was that he was longer and taller, and I wondered if that would provide any challenge for Broner. The answer is no, it did not. And so he got inside with this bigger fighter and just brawled it out with him and beat him to death. And he's calculated. He has a good defense. This is the rising star of boxing, and I'm surprised he doesn't have... Sometimes I'm just shocked that certain people get a lot of credit and publicity and others don't. And with this situation, like Mayweather, I've just never understood what the interest is in him when he's so boring to watch. Broner's not that. He's very entertaining to watch. So while he is, wants to be and is, following in the footsteps of Roy Jones Jr. and Floyd Mayweather, this guy's a knockout artist and somebody I recommend you definitely should watch. It was a good fight. This guy he was fighting was a B+ fighter, not an A level. You rate like a grade you rate fighters, but he destroyed him. His face was all beat up on one side where Broner had just hit him with that jab, that stiff jab over and over and over. So another impressive win for Broner. He's really the great upcoming fighter out there. I wanted to see him fight Donaire, but he's moving up in weight division and soon probably will be in the welterweight in the next few years. This is Middle Class Matt, and I'll see you next time.